I'm going to go ahead. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to call to order the Thursday, June 23rd, 2022 meeting of the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission. We will start with roll call, please.
All right. Kathleen Taylor.
Here.
Kate Nelson. Kyle West.
Here.
Larry Chesney.
Present.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Peter Gower.
Here.
Sarah Chavilicek.
Here.
Scott Carey.
Present.
And Shelley Reed.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda, I'd like to ask everybody to stand for the salute to the flag. And of course, Commissioner Chesney, please lead us this evening. All right. Thank you very much. Next, I am looking for an approval of tonight's agenda as distributed.
Commissioner Chesney moves to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Chesney. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Mr. Taylor, a second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move forward with tonight's agenda. Next is public comment. Do we have any public comment for this evening?
I have received none at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on from that. Approval of the minutes, May 26th, 2022 Regional Planning Commission meeting. We have the minutes distributed. Looking for a motion for approval or any comments?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Carey.
thank you. I caught one small typo on page 4 under item 7.A. When I was talking, basically, the word Paiute is spelled wrong. It's P-A-I-U-T-E, not P-I-U-T-E. Just a small one. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Would you like to motion for approval with everything with the exception of that?
Sure. With that, I would make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of May 26, 2022, with the corrections on page 4 as outlined on the record.
Thank you. I have a motion. Looking for a second.
Commissioner Taylor, a second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And now we're on to business of the day. A, public hearing, a regional plan conformance review, master plan amendment. Director Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. Today we have item 6A, which is a regional plan conformance review, City of Reno Master Plan Amendment and Project of Regional Significance for the Peavine Employment Center. This is actually a reconsideration. We're going to have a presentation by Nate Kusha here to take us and let us know what's going to happen.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Nate Kusha for the record, Team RPA. So this item is for the reconsideration of the Peavine Employment Center Master Plan Amendment and the conformance review of the associated project of regional significance. So just a quick overview of the process here tonight. I'm going to give a quick overview of TMRPA's perspective. Then we're going to hand it to the applicant, which is the City of Reno, for a quick presentation by them, followed by the applicant's interested party presentation. So with that, this amendment is a City of Reno master plan land use change from large lot neighborhood and public quasi-public to mixed employment and parks, greenways, and open space. And the project is also considered a project of regional significance for having the effect on the region of increasing employment by not less than 938 employees. As outlined in our previous Planning Commission meeting staff report, regional planning staff has recommended that both the master plan amendment and the project of regional significance do conform with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. So some further information. This subject site is generally located to the southeast of the intersections of Red Rock Road and Trail Drive. The request is to change about 207 acres of large lot neighborhood and a little over 3 acres of public quasi-public to roughly 169 acres of mixed employment and 41 acres of parks, greenways, and open space. The proposal does include roughly 44 acres that are currently in the unincorporated Washoe County jurisdiction at high-density rural land use, which is equivalent to the large lot neighborhood land use in the City of Reno. The associated annexation request has been processed through the City of Reno to bring that portion under the City of Reno's jurisdiction. Finally, this proposal is also being considered as a project of regional significance. According to calculations that Team RPA has done, we have estimated a maximum of about 2,106 employees. The actual number of employees realized may be lower than this. However, the assumption is that it will be over that 938 employee threshold that constitutes a PRS. So some background on the process for this case. At your May 26th meeting, a motion to approve the master plan amendment did not pass with a vote of 5-4, and that technical denial does constitute a finding of nonconformance with the regional plan. Following that, on June 8th, the Reno City Council provided direction to city staff to go ahead and file an objection and request that the RPC reconsider this item, and that is pursuant to state law. The letter of objection was received on June 15th, and that's why we're here tonight, for you guys to reconsider the objection as outlined by the City of Reno. So finally, policy RC9 of the regional plan does identify the 5 factors that the RPC must consider when evaluating conformance that you can see on the slide overhead here. If you cannot make a finding of conformance with the review criteria here, after the hearing the objection, please indicate which policies are not met. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the City of Reno for a presentation.
Good evening, Commission. Chair Johnson. My name is Brooke Oswald. I am an Associate Planner in Development Services with the City of Reno. This is the first time I have ever sat before a commission, so let's see how I do. Once again, this is a reconsideration of that conformance review. That case is CR 22002, Peavine Employment Center. A little bit of this will be some review or go over a little bit what regional staff just reviewed, but to just give the project information. Once again, it's a 200-acre site. It's about 13 parcels, just so we know where this is. This is Red Rock Road, Stead Boulevard. So we are just sitting south of that 395 intersection with Red Rock Road. As we look at that, we have previous City of Reno approvals. That case is LDC 22-00018. We had a master plan resolution and zoning map ordinance were both approved. That zoning map ordinance is a little different. That is a specific plan district, and that has a base of mixed employment. But that specific plan district, it's similar to what you may have heard of a PUD. It allows for alterations and changes within a handbook to the underlying zoning of MZ. Some of those are hours of operation, allowing 24-hour operation, building size, and has additional sustainability requirements within that handbook. Additionally, there's an annexation that just came on. That's approximately 40 acres shown in the bright yellow there of land that was in voluntary annexation of that land within the county. Quickly go through the master plan amendment. We are looking at that large lot, the LL that you see there at the bottom, and then we have the unincorporated, the county zoning above. That county zoning is translated to our city zoning, and then that would be the translation that we'd see. So that comes into that mixed employment and that parks, greenways, and open space. You can see those parks, green, and open space are located to the perimeters, creating buffers to those surrounding uses, and the two going up and down are over major drainage ways that are through there. And then that is further reflected within our handbook as you see the zoning going down and reflecting to make sure we're preserving those buffers and open space areas. It is a project of regional significance for employment. Just quickly to go through the timeline one more time. City of Reno back in March, it was approval of 6-1. The city did sponsor and then becomes the applicant. We came to Regional Planning Commission on May 26th. Regional staff did recommend approval. We went through that conformance through that evening, and we had that technical denial of 5-4 at the time. It requires the 2/3 majority of the commission. We took that back and Reno City Council, and we sought direction and authority for that reconsideration, and then the further appeal if the decision is upheld tonight, to appeal that to the Regional Governing Board. That was approved once again 6-1. So we had the objection filing that we filed with regional staff. And here we are in the bright blue. We're at the Regional Planning Commission tonight. What we are asking is for that reconsideration of that decision that was held at that previous meeting, and that we have the project of regional conformance is also decided this evening. So if that decision is changed tonight and that reconsideration and approval, we will go to Reno City Clerk's office, where we'd see that certification of that master plan. And then additionally, that zoning ordinance annexation and filing of that handbook would happen at that time. If the decision is upheld, the city staff has been directed to file an appeal of that decision. And we anticipate we'd be in the August 26th Regional Governing Board. If that Regional Governing Board upholds that decision, all of those approvals will fail. So the zoning will fail, the annexation will fail, handbook will fail, and then, of course, our master plan will fail. If they reverse that decision, we will go to the city clerk, and that will all be approved. Quickly going through how staff looked at this as we're looking at development and an understanding of a historical development. This is going approximately over about a decade or 10-year time period, back around 2010. And really what I want to try to show is that growth of the North Virginia corridor. Just so everyone, as we can see the Reno-Stead Airport up to the top there, this is Lemon Drive, Stead Boulevard, Red Rock Road, and our project site is sitting where the star is. So as we move, in probably 5 years estimates, we're starting to see some large building format warehouse distribution coming in down around Lemon Drive. We're also seeing some additional warehousing up past some of those established residential up to the north. And this is coming in about 2 years ago, so you can see there's been drastic growth along that corridor. That's largely been driven by a master plan amendment of taking that to industrial in that area and kind of facilitating that development and growth down that corridor, and then the need and market need for that type of development. So additionally, our site is in close proximity to 395. As I mentioned before, it doesn't go through the residential. It's a direct shot. There's some county large lot residential, but we're not seeing the large neighborhood residential that we are seeing to the north project site. This is supportive of that residential growth. We are looking for that work-life balance within this and that sustainability that comes with that, like automobile miles, reduced traffic miles, and a number of that, and then overall quality of life. And then additionally, the Regional Transportation Commission has in their 2030 to 2050 plan. We're currently under design on from Lemon Drive to Stead Boulevard. That is under the design phase. What we'll see is an expansion of the roadways there with turn lanes to accommodate that truck traffic. The next phase of that will be from Stead Boulevard to Red Rock Road, that will see that expansion to open and provide that transportation in that area. Quickly to go over the tier, this is, as we can see, the outlined in yellow. We're clearly within kind of the center of that Tier 2 development. We're seeing that bright blue to the right is that Tier 1 development, where we're seeing a lot of that industrial use happening down through there. We're seeing that warehousing, but we are seeing some older uses of auto wrecking yards and some of those older uses that were originally out in the county that the city has taken over. We are seeing some natural constraints, and really you can see a rural area. We have federal lands both to, further to the south of the project site, and we have that Tier 2, which is that constraint of those hillsides and that zoning there. The city staff really looked at that as that being a clear demarcation at that point. So as we go through this is our master plan. So once again, that green that we were seeing in that Tier 2 and some of that area that we were identifying as a constraint is parks, greenways, and open space. So that highly restricts what, if that is annexed in the future, that development would be highly restricted within that area or would require a master plan change to accommodate any development. Additionally, we're seeing the blue stripe, and that's kind of a different one. That's an SPA. That's a remnant of the Reno-Stead Joint Corridor Plan. That has been sunsetted by the county and regional. The city is currently still working through that to sunlight that, but it is not in effect at this point. What we'd anticipate is that as we are doing our current conformance between our master plan and our zoning, that we would see that to come in line at that point. And so we would anticipate what we're seeing, that area would become into a more likely to come into that industrial master plan that we would see. Now, this is really interesting as we look at those lands that are entitled around this. We do have approximately 400 acres. That is that UT 40. That's that unincorporated 1 unit per 40 acres. What we'd anticipate in the future as we get as utilities services become more available in that area, that we would probably anticipate a master plan amendment and zone change in that to facilitate development in that. At one per 40, it wouldn't be in the interest for the city to develop that at that point in our side. One thing that is interesting, you can see the arrow. We do have entitled land. So directly above where we see that we have this little square here, this is a water tank. And we see kind of an outcropping here of a hillside here. We're seeing industrial land directly above that. We would see that industrial master plan coming in over that, and possibly a mixed employment or other coming down over this zoning when we bring those into conformance. Additionally, this is a unique property. Once again, I'll reemphasize that Interstate 395, that it is in close proximity to provide, to really limit impacts that we're seeing on those residential neighborhoods. Additionally, we have a railway. It's a currently active railway line. Those are oftentimes associated. We want to see those associated with industrial and have that ability to have that industrial use in the future. And that's just to the project site there where the arrow shows. Quickly, just to go over the authority and our sphere of influence. So what we're seeing here is the purple is our sphere of influence, not currently annexed. The yellow stripe is the City of Reno, current City of Reno boundary. As you can see, there is a hole within that. That is more likely a remnant of that Reno-Stead Joint Corridor Plan. And this area has had, what we're seeing is remnants of plans. And as we move forward to establish the master plan or to do that, we've kind of taken our best guess of what was there before and what we have. And so it's never been looked at a more clear and detailed way as we are looking at it now. Once again, we are looking at this appropriated that it is within the City of Reno. Those services will, or those utilities and services will be brought to the site. And additionally, we are, in talking both to regional and our own, we do have a limitation of available land, especially for industrial uses, and the proximity to the interstate, the proximity to the expanding corridor of North Virginia, with staff's analysis that this was an appropriate land use. I'll quickly go through our public input. There was a neighborhood meeting. It was attended by 7 people, local neighbors. There were a number of questions of impacts. A lot of those really came back down, not the master plan itself, which is the requirement of the master plan to have that neighborhood meeting, but the handbook and what mitigations would be in place to make sure that those uses would be incompatibility. So we have some walls coming in, we have signage of no truck traffic, we have some other buffers and some other limitations coming in through that. This did go to the neighborhood advisory meeting. There was comment in support of this project. Additionally, we had the owner of the adjacent zoo come out. She had curiosity what was happening, and then also what services would be provided to her in the future. So as we see those services of Tumwa Water, City of Reno Sewer coming in, power and other services, those would be available to those county residents, and they do have that option because of that adjacency to annex into the city at that point. We did receive additional 3 additional public comments in opposition to the project. With that, I'll end my presentation. I'm available for questions as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Garrett Gordon as the representative for the applicant's interested party.
Good evening. For the record, Garrett Gordon, today on behalf of the applicant. I always appreciate this room. It's so close and personal. You can arm wrestle over this, Mr. Chairman. So thanks for a couple minutes. I won't take a lot of time, but I just really wanted to focus on the concerns from the 4 commissioners who voted no. We thought that was important to address that spot on and really let you know we took those concerns very seriously. So the Regional Planning Commission, as mentioned, voted 5-4 that this proposal was non-conformance with the regional plan. basically two issues came up that we heard loud and clear: land use compatibility and what was the prior public concerns and opposition. I think we heard those comments from the Washoe County Commissioners. Let me first say, we take obviously the regional process very seriously, and we did some initial regional planning due diligence early on. Even before we had our first public hearing, you can see here at the slide highlighted, we approached regional planning and said, are there any conformance review issues? Given we're in tier 2, given there's access plan from obviously a major roadway, Red Rock Road, given it's ideal for future industrial development, it's contemplated in the regional plan, and you'll hear in a minute, the City of Reno Master Plan and infrastructure can easily be extended to the site via water and sewer. And so we brought that to regional early on to make sure when I was before this body, we were before this body, that we were prepared to address any concerns. And you saw and see this memo, potential conformance issues. The city's regional staff has not identified any potential conformance issues at that time. So not to say we shouldn't address them now if you have any, but again, showing that we made a really good faith effort early on in the process to check that box with regional. Compatibility, I have a few slides. One, when we applied for this proposal at the City of Reno, we took a close look at the City of Reno's master plan and made sure from day one that we were in compliance with the goals and policies and really the intent of Reimagine Reno. So policy 2.2b talks about consolidation and assemblage of properties to improve and coordinate the redevelopment of blocks or segments of corridors where a property-by-property approach would limit development potential. You can see the area here in green is toward 12 parcels in Washoe County. Certainly, you couldn't really develop that on a case-by-case basis. And the Echeverria family is behind me tonight. They are actually the property owners. They're selling a portion of this property, but we've retained some as well, and I'll address to you what they will be retaining. But it did, in fact, require a consolidation. And so we did come to the Washoe County Planning Commission months ago for this consolidation. And granted, we didn't talk about a project, as the Washoe County Commissioners know. We didn't talk about a project or uses, just consolidating these parcels for a larger project, about 80 acres of consolidation. And I would submit to you tonight, out of all the options of what that consolidation would accomplish for a project, this is the least intense, a mixed employment project that has lower sewer, lower water, and lower trips than, say, a dense housing project or some other kind of project. This mixed employment is the least intense use that would be appropriate, we believe, and in compatibility with the Reno Master Plan to redevelop this area and consolidate this area into a project that we think the whole community, both City of Reno and Washoe County constituents, can enjoy. Continuing on, we heard from the 4 folks who voted no about compatibility. And so Wood Rogers spent a considerable amount of time putting together this exhibit, and I'd like to go through it. But why are we here in the first place? Why are we proposing this mixed employment industrial project? Well, City of Reno Master Plan says modern industrial hubs. The city supports the continued growth of the city's logistics and manufacturing industries and leverage the region's infrastructure and assets to broaden the economic base through attraction of advanced manufacturing, employers, and modern logistics operations. I think that's why the city council has now voted 6-1 twice that this is absolutely in compliance with their master plan to move this modern industrial hub forward. But the question now is this the right location? Is this location compatible? Well, if you look at this, I think pretty interesting exhibit here, you can see our property, subject property in the middle. It has dashed gray lines. It has a red outline. That is identified as, of course, our property, but mixed zoning with industrial. So it's not the hardcore, you can see on here, kind of a dark gray or an all gray industrial use, because we went to a specific handbook and we plugged some pieces from industrial, City of Reno industrial components, and from their mixed employment code to come up with kind of a hybrid project that worked for this area. And why did we think it was compatible? Well, you can look, we actually touch right to the southeast another mixed zoning with industrial project or zoning. It's right there. So there was discussion by the commissioners last hearing that there was this natural break of industrial really stopped at our site and didn't move forward, kind of heading westbound. I think this map kind of gives, and let me just say, you didn't have the benefit of this map. So this is new information, and I'm hopeful it's kind of compelling to the folks who had concerns. So you can see our site certainly already touches a mixed zoning and industrial. If I came before you with just a dark gray industrial-only site, yeah, maybe it wouldn't be compatible, but we think this mixed zoning is. But then, interesting enough, as you head westbound, we heard some concerns that, hey, there's a natural break there on Virginia. Nothing's really happening westbound. Well, if you continue down 395, there's also south of 395, mixed zoning with industrial right there by Stonegate. So it continues on. So there is not a natural break. It continues to move on. And then even further, when you get up to Whites Lake, granted it's north of 395, but still there's also some industrial uses and zoning up there. And then finally, as you head up kind of by Bordertown, over there right on the California border, you can see that dark gray industrial. That is zoned industrial. And recently, the Washoe County Board of Adjustment approved a grading permit for that project. So you have an, quote, intense industrial use already in the county, has been approved for a grading permit that is west of us on the south side of 395. So I would say not only the city of Reno approved the growth of this modern industrial hub, but the county has also supported it with a grading permit of moving this corridor from, the right side of this map all the way to the left side of this map, and we're arguably right in the middle and not an anomaly. And finally, the second bullet point I have is Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Policy, RF11. So there was concerns by this commission regarding compatibility at the regional level. It says, local government master plans must address land use compatibility. The regional planning will consider the compatibility of proposals at a regional level with regards to existing densities and intensities and surrounding land uses. So I would ask you, if you look at that from a regional perspective, that we picked a hybrid employment, mixed employment and industrial, that hatched area. It's certainly compatible with surrounding land uses to our east, certainly compatible with that industrial corridor as you move down over to additional industrial westbound, and we're kind of right in the middle of this. So I would submit that from a regional policy perspective, we are compatible with existing densities and intensities and the surrounding land uses. Public outreach, I just have two more slides. Public outreach, I know this came up, I think, especially from the two Washoe County commissioners, because they weren't involved in the City of Reno process. So as Brooklyn mentioned, we had two neighborhood meetings. The first was virtually, 100 postcards went out. Two people actively participated, and their concerns were regarding access, drainage, utility, noise, and lighting. Also, the same issues came up at the NAB. So what did we do to address these comments? Panattoni is absolutely committed to addressing not only City of Reno, but these were Washoe County constituents who had concerns. Also, the Echeverria family has owned property out there and been in this community for a long time. They wanted to also be a good community partner. So what did we do? What did we change in and modify in our proposal in response to these concerns? Well, one, we have heard from a long time, and this also was from input from Councilwoman Bonnie Weber, and also I believe three Washoe County commissioners have said before, okay, there's a lot of residential going out here. Where are the services? Where are the restaurants? Where are the microbreweries? Where are the services? So we specifically in our handbook created this gateway area right off of Red Rock Road that you can't put industrial, you can't put warehousing there, you can't put industrial there. That hatched area is limited to retail and commercial uses for a restaurant, for a bakery, for a commercial kitchen, for a microbrewery. And the Echeverria family behind me are retaining that piece and are committed to City of Reno, and I stand before you tonight committing to Washoe County to do everything they can, it's zoned this way now, to bring in that commercial, retail, bakery, microbrewery, restaurant that the North Valley is desperately needed. And I don't know, I'm not aware of any other project that has finally made this commitment to Washoe County to move this forward in such a way that would limit any other uses except those uses that are desperately needed. In addition, there was a concern along Trail Drive regarding noise and impacts from this project. Well, we agreed to install a 6-foot screen wall along Trail Drive. You can see that blue line that certainly satisfied the residents out there. And you can see they didn't show up in droves. I think the Reno Planning Commissioners will agree. They didn't show up with a room full of people opposed there. At City Council, both 6-1 votes. The room wasn't full because we did our homework early on. In addition, that red dot, there was concern about truck traffic coming down. And the zoo was concerned about truck traffic coming down Trail Drive. Well, we agreed to put signage there, do everything we could to discourage any truck traffic down trail, and it would go directly into the site. And of course, enhanced lighting standards to ensure dark skies are met. So we took the public outreach from the Washoe County neighbors very seriously. We amended our handbook and hopefully can get a restaurant out there that's desperately needed. My last slide is, I can stand up here and say, hey, we don't have any objections and, we have support, but not very often you actually get a letter on the record that says this. And you can see the owner of the zoo who was concerned at the beginning, and much of these properties to the north, even though they're zoned residential, they're actually operating in the commercial sense. The zoo says they no longer have any objections, and they truly believe this project will improve this North Valley area by bringing with it new business that, including that gateway area that's desperately needed for this community. So you heard Brooklyn say, if this chip falls with this conformance review, everything falls and there's not a project. So I respectfully ask that you reconsider this application. And if you look at the analysis that's been done, the Reno planning staff recommended approval, the Reno City Council twice in the vote 6-1, which be tough sitting here saying if it was a 4-3 or even a 5-2 that there was, some controversy. It wasn't controversial at the city of Reno. Regional planning staff, I thought, did a very good job early on with the analysis and the analysis they've recently done, recommending approval. So I'd ask you to respectfully consider that analysis and hopefully this additional information we provided, especially the compatibility map, and vote in favor of the regional plan conformance. So thank you for your time, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate that. Nate, did you have any follow-ups to that? Okay.
Just brief information about kind of our possible motions tonight. So again, this is requires both a vote for a master plan amendment and a project of regional significance. So the RPC should make a final determination affirming, reversing, or modifying the previous action on the master plan amendment. As is indicated, the conformance motion would reverse the RPC's original determination of nonconformance, while the nonconformance motion would uphold the RPC's original determination. So myself, City of Reno, as well as the applicant's representative, are available for questions. And I don't know if Jessica wants to do anything on voting requirements for these motions.
Thank you, Jessica Prunty, for the record, on the sidelines. As this commission is well aware, there has to be an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the entire body, which is 6 votes, for a finding of conformance on the master plan amendment. However, if you make a motion to find that it's not in conformance, that same 2/3 requirement is not required. So that would be a simple majority. And then on to the next item, which we're not here yet, but on the PRS, we are looking at a simple majority, one way or the other. If you have any questions as you move through your discussion, I am available.
Sarah, keep that microphone handy for Jessica's use there. That'd be nice.
We're sharing it, yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for the presentation. So I guess next I'll check to see, do we have any public comment on this item?
I have received none.
Okay, anyone wishing to make public comment on this? Okay, we'll close public comment. I'll bring it back to the commission for any disclosures prior to our discussion. Commissioner Reed?
Do we have to make disclosures that we made at the last meeting, even though we haven't had any meetings since then? Maybe that's a Jessica question.
No, I don't think so. We already
Okay,
made
so
those
the
disclosures.
disclosures that we made last month.
If there's been
are-
additional contact between the last meeting and today, then I would encourage you to make disclosures.
Mr. Gower?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Gower, I had a brief correspondence with a representative from Panantoni since the last meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Commissioner Johnson and I have had the same correspondence with Panatoni since the last meeting. Okay. All right. With that, I will open it up to Commission for questions of any of the interested parties we've heard from this evening. Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Garrett, I don't know if you can, I actually have a question for staff, but I was hoping you could put that land use compatibility map that you prepared back up, or that Stacy prepared.
That one?
Yeah, thank you. Nate, so when you're looking at this map, so let me just start off by saying I really appreciate Wood Rogers and the applicant's representative for putting this map together. I think it's really helpful for understanding the compatibility question, and particularly as it relates to policy RF11, the compatibility factors. So Nate, my question to you is, when you look at this map, how do you see this project relative to the other uses in this area? And if you could kind of walk me through the micro piece of it. So regional's looking at, with the uses that are directly adjacent to the property, and in a situation like this where it's pretty zoomed out and you're looking at a quite macro scale. And if you could fill me in on how regional looks at this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will start with saying that this was a map created by Wood Rogers. It's not a Team RPA map. So this is not necessarily our take on it specifically. We look at kind of the land uses overarching on the sites. This is a little more detailed than that. I will say that from our perspective, the kind of local immediate adjacency, I would say as kind of the first part of our policy where we ask the local master plans to address that in their master plans. So the city of Reno did vote to approve this, and that's why we're seeing it. So we looked at that, the local compatibility as the city of Reno kind of approved that, and they think it's compatible with their surrounding land uses. And then we took a bigger picture, and our initial presentation at the previous RPC meeting, we had a little bit more zoomed in version of this where we didn't include that kind of more North Valleys area, but we did kind of look at the Stead area in general up there and saw, to the point of this map to some degree, there are quite a few industrial uses in the area, and specifically south of that 395 has been mentioned many times, and we did see the growth over the last 20 years and the changes of those land uses and what has been built and realized be predominantly industrial south of 395 in the Stead area, whereas predominantly residential north of 395 in the area. So that's the way we looked at the compatibility from the regional level.
Thank you for that. And as a follow-up question, how do you look at the implications of a land use change such as this from essentially a fairly low-density, residentially oriented land use in an area that is currently surrounded by similar uses on, two sides at least, a little bit to the east as well. I mean, how do you look at that change as essentially shifting the character of that particular area, more of the zoomed-in area?
I think a couple points on that. One being that, yes, you're right that it is currently surrounded and is residential itself and surrounded by residential uses. I will say south of the subject site itself has a land use for residential, but is very low density and currently only one house built on it. And then in general, the surrounding area, there's kind of a limited number of residential uses, whereas if we were to see something like this maybe even just directly north of 395, there's a lot more higher density, more residences that would be impacted. And the second being kind of referring to my previous point on where south of 395, we've seen that kind of transition of residential to industrial happening over the last 20 years or so in the city of Reno specifically. And so we saw this to kind of be in line with what we deem to be kind of the changing character of the area.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, if I could have one follow-up question, I think I'm actually going to direct this towards legal counsel. And I guess staff, feel free to weigh in too, but Jessica, in making a determination, you're asking us to pinpoint a particular policy that, we have trouble making a conformance finding based on or based against. How should the commission weigh potentially competing master or regional plan policies? So we've been presenting with information that says the region needs more industrial land uses. That's a pretty compelling argument. We're being presented with a land use that provides that opportunity. In my personal opinion, I have trouble making the finding for RF11 related to compatibility. How does one weigh those competing policy priorities in making a decision of conformance?
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Jessica Prunty for the record again. In your regional planning statutes and in your plan, there is no hierarchy as to which policies have priority over any other policies. So I don't know if I have a legal answer for your question. I think this comes down to your decision-making rubric and whether, in your perspective, the concerns you have regarding compatibility of land uses outweighs, the positives of having additional industrial development in this area under our plan and that promotion of those uses. So my recommendation is that this falls on each of you to weigh and balance, in your opinion, what drives your findings and what can make your findings. But there is not a legal rubric of saying one policy takes precedence over another policy.
You appreciate that answer. Thank you, Nate, for your responses too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are the only questions I have right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Commissioners, additional questions? Commissioner Tvilicek.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of my fellow commissioners, I probably am in a very unique position because I see this property every day and I drive through it every day. And I'm glad that this map is still up because all of the residential that goes south on North Virginia is now, their view shed has been significantly impacted by all of the industrial development around. I still contend that there is a demarcation that happens right around Stead Boulevard where it comes into North Virginia, where you have a railroad track, and then you start moving towards more and more residential. And there's a significant amount of open space there. Nate, you kept referring to one home. There is more than one home. I mean, I know that there's one home right there, but there are significant number of homes as you go further down North Virginia.
Just to clarify, that was on the property that has the land use of UT 40
Okay,
directly
okay,
south.
thank
That's the
you.
only one that has one home on that parcel.
Okay, thank you. And so in terms of with access to public lands and open space, when you have Peavine so close and where people have access to that mountain significantly, this is going to have an impact. And I have real trouble still finding conformancy with RF11. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, additional questions? Commissioner Carey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question for the applicant, City of Reno applicant. I should have clarified, sorry. Yeah. Brooke, welcome to Sparks. I felt I should ask you a question. appreciate the city staff's letter, objection filing letter, and the information that was provided on that. I was kind of curious if you might be able to elaborate on, from the city's perspective, about compatibility. And I get where Commissioner Gower is going from kind of the micro scale to the larger scale. I was wondering if you might be able to elaborate on compatibility.
Sure, and we looked at both of that as we went through this, especially in that master plan. So we were looking at that compatibility of what we're seeing, that growth, that industrial corridor down South Virginia, the compatible uses of the wrecking yard, some of the vacant lands. Now, when you bring that into micro level, you do come into those large lot residential county residents, and how do we mitigate or provide, there's oftentimes they cannot be compatible. And so what we've seen there in the master plan, you're seeing that where you're seeing those large PGS, Parks, Greenway, and open space buffers around that. And so they're providing 50-foot, 100-foot buffers within that area. Additionally, we're looking at additional walls, sound walls, and some of that between the industrial uses and those residential areas. Restriction of truck traffic to mainly the main backbone road to reduce overall traffic and impacts on those other residents. So we did that more. That's coming through our zoning, that we started to really apply a lot of those mitigation through there. So we were looking at that larger of what we're seeing down that corridor and that growth, and then we tried to use our zoning with that mitigation, the input that we were getting from the surrounding properties to provide reduce the impacts and provide the opportunity for compatibility between those uses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Commissioner Gower, are you following up with a question?
I am, if you wouldn't mind.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Brooke, do you, as city staff, look at a potential land use change like this as, is there consideration that if this change moves forward, that it would essentially create an anchor point to justify future land use changes surrounding the property?
Well, I think anytime, with this, what we'd anticipate that we'd see that extension of those utilities and services, right? And so that does provide that opportunity for those others. We have annexed already, 400 acres above that are annexed into the city. When we annex, that comes in under the thought consideration that we would anticipate development in the future on that. So yes, we would anticipate that this would, as we got those services, the roadway comes in, the utilities come in, that does open that up. But we are looking at land that is within the city. It would require that go before commissions and boards, our commissions and our city council. Once again, we'd require a master plan. It would be before this board. So there's a review process when that happens. But we would anticipate those surrounding properties in the future would develop at a higher intensity than they're currently master planned and zoned.
Regardless of whether this is approved or not, or
Well,
more likely if it is?
Well, if those are extended, it takes the cost and the burden off those uphill properties, right? So they're going to be responsible. So it really comes down to a market and what they're proposing, the density of that, how it pencils. So it's hard for city staff to say yes or no, but with this development, we'd anticipate that now we do have those services in closer proximity. It makes that next property more viable to develop.
And I appreciate that, and I totally get that logic. And if I could just ask you to take the infrastructure and concurrency component kind of off the table and just look at it from a compatibility perspective of the land uses. So right now, it's large lot residential. The property to the south is UT 40. If there were a change in, or a request for a land use change in the UT 40 parcel, if the property to the north was still large lot residential, my assumption would be that staff would be less likely to find a compatibility, that the change would be compatible, like an intensification of the use would be compatible if that property to the north was still large lot residential versus the proposed change in front of us. It just logically makes sense that now, with this map as we're seeing it, an intensification of the use to the south, is the justification is there almost automatically because you've got surrounding land uses that are also more intense. So that was my question about the creating an anchor for future compatibility findings. Is that good logic, or is that not something that staff?
I think that's reasonable logic, obviously, to look that if we intensify here, what does that do surrounding it, right? I'm coming back once again, that annexation, a large lot residential or that UT 40 is not something that the city that we really want to see, because the cost of services to provide for that, the overall use of land, a number of those other things, right? It's not a wise use of land. And so we would see, if we did see the intensification here, yes, we would see it on the neighboring property, but on the same way, with the right project and making sure those concerns, see those met, that property to the south could develop without this developing, right? Assuming they get the easements and the roadway and they have that, there's a number of other things, there's a railroad and there's some other constraints that need to be overcome before you could develop that property. But that's an option too, that it is in the city. We would entertain that it intensify to some extent, because UT 40 is not something we can provide services for in an efficient and economic way.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one more question. To my earlier question to legal counsel, does the city feel that industrial uses it's a compelling reason versus compatibility? What's the priority for the city?
Well, I mean, we sat at the Planning Commission, we had this discussion at the Planning Commission, and there, we do, when we look at our master plan and we're looking at those economic hubs and providing jobs and service and some of those economic drivers that we see within our master plan that are very key and main goal points of our things. We also have those other compatibilities and livability and those other things, right? And we had this discussion, how do you weigh those? And once again, I think it was very similar discussion to what legal said tonight, is that is what you're here to kind of weigh those out and see what it is. When staff looked at this and we looked at the proximity to the 395, that expansion, it was a logical extension for us to look at those economic drivers and that work-life balance. We do have a lot of housing out in the North Valleys. We're looking at trying to balance that. And so that's how staff came to look at that. Why we are looking at those other ones, and sometimes they can be, as we've talked about, they can be in conflict.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, additional questions? Commissioner West?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a comment. I do appreciate the existing development patterns map prepared by Wood Rogers, as it actually further strengthens my ability to be able to find for this rezoning application, and I do intend to support the requested amendment.
Thank you. Additional questions? I have one. Actually, for Brooke, sorry. I was gonna flag you down, but the musical chairs that was nice and amusing. I did appreciate that. I know, exactly. Brooke, you mentioned something in your presentation about the fact that this is, because it came in as an SPD, it's not a straight way of looking at the zoning and the allowable items. And so you mentioned a couple of things that we're modifying from the mixed employment. You mentioned hours of operation, building size, some additional, I think, land, setbacks, some other kind of back and forth. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, as a part of the presentation, and again, going back to this, there is the discussion about pure industrial versus a lower intensity type of industrial. And so I guess I'm trying to understand, there were modifications made in the SPD to hours of operation and building size, both of which allow for a later, basically 24 hours of operation and larger buildings. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So if we look at that SPD, right, we have a base zoning. So we picked our ME. That's one of our lower industrial zoning. That is our lowest industrial zoning. We have ME, IC, I. Instead of going to higher and trying to restrict things, what we did is we started lower and we added. So we are seeing some of those uses and things that are allowed, the 24-hour use that ME restricts, the building size, which would put it more into an IC. But what we are also seeing at the same time is we're seeing those restricted of those more intensive uses, right? So those batch plants and those heavier uses that have more impact on the surrounding properties. So there's kind of two ways to go at it, and what we've tried to do is go less and add more than go big and take it away.
Okay, so then, going back to the pattern that we're looking at here, where what's being shown is sort of the, I guess the mixed zoning with industrial that is supported by the SPD in terms of the way that it's being approached.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is sort of we have strict industrial and IC to the south down that corridor is developed out. It's largely developed out as warehouse and distribution at this part. This really kind of even limits that more to warehouse and distribution and doesn't allow for those more heavy uses. Like we have an auto wrecking yard out there that is allowable under that industrial. So this really brings that down. And so we're seeing that intensity of use sort of narrowing as we get towards Red Rock Road.
Thank you. And then I guess I do have a question for Nate, because you guys, I couldn't ask, I had to ask the first question there was a logic to it. So I did want to, you did have a image I think it was in your presentation, Nate, where we were talking about the tier one, basically in this area, we have tier one development that I think somewhat corresponds with some of that higher intensity use that we're seeing to the east of here.
Brooks' presentation that you had.
And it may be.
You know what slide it is?
Slide, but turn it on because it's going to have animation.
Gotcha. Will do.
Before, right there.
Right there.
Okay, so that was, so in looking at the map that we just had, that we've had up there for a while, so I think what we're looking at here is an example of where the discussions about this being tier two and emphasizing nodes, staff is looking at this different than tier one, where that intense development is at. But we're also, as part of that, we're also as close or closer to tier three in terms of land. So is there, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm assuming that tier three is there because of some geographical constraints with the slope and the sort of natural aspect of what's happening just to the west of this parcel.
So I think when we went through the tier setting, there are a variety of factors that went into setting the tiers. One thing that we looked at specifically was facilities and service, whether they're available and planned or planned for, and kind of the feasibility of serving things. So as we move into that tier three, that's kind of a longer time frame of when we would expect in facilities and services to be available for more development in these areas. So as we look at tier two, that's kind of an area where there are some facilities and services, some areas, there's plans for facilities and services in other areas, or at least they're more feasible to serve in the nearer term rather than a longer term thing.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Okay, commissioners, any additional questions? Or we can move into discussion, comments?
I have just a
Commissioner Reed.
comment. Just to let you know, I've supported this amendment in our last meeting, and I find even more reasons to support it. I think it is compatible, and I will be in support of the motion. So I think it meets all the findings as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Additional commissioner comments? Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to say again that I appreciate staff's work putting together the report, City of Reno staff for the analysis, and the applicant's representative for putting together that information. I think it was useful for the conversation. I mean, it's such a tricky one, right, for me. I feel like I'm maybe looking at it just from a different lens or something from my other commissioners. I don't know, but the compatibility question for me is, if you look at that map, it's it's basically saying that if we approve this, we're okay with the predominant land use of that sort of southwest quadrant of that map, essentially transitioning from fairly low-density, residentially oriented development pattern towards industrial. And like was brought up earlier, there is a pretty distinct break right now in that pattern. It's a little bit diluted, I think, when you zoom out on a map at that scale. You don't really see it as much. I think the compelling thing for me with the macro map was just the nature of the North Valleys. I mean, it is so checkerboarded between industrial and residential. So, I mean, what is really compatible up there, I don't really know, frankly, anymore. But looking at that a little bit more zoomed in scale, I'm still fundamentally concerned that this land use change would shift the future development pattern of that area into something that is more intense. And I keep asking myself, is that okay? And I'm hearing, a lot of people and a lot of experts say that's okay. So that's, Mr. Chairman, what I'm juggling around in my mind right now. And I've voted twice that I'm not okay with it. And while I saw information tonight that was informative and I got some great answers to questions, I don't know that anything necessarily pushed me further back to say that, yes, I am okay and I can make the RF11 finding. Thank you for that long-winded, patience with that long-winded discussion item.
No problem, Commissioner Gower. I haven't even started my long-winded discussion on it yet, so, we're only just getting rolling. Any other commissioners before I do have just a couple of comments. Again, the presentation tonight, all three of them were excellent in terms of sort of expanding out the issues with this. And I think, the questions that were asked and the comments that were made, I think, really shined a light, at least in my mind, on kind of what we're looking at here. Because, and what I really appreciate was sort of the comments from both city and, regional about, as a commissioner, trying to weigh what is most important, because they're all equal in the eyes of the way that the plan is written. And when that comes back to where I'm looking at it, I have a hard time because I'm looking at it and what's being presented is two dimensions. It's a map. It's a bunch of colored boxes on the plan that are in close proximity to each other. And that's not how I look at things. That's not, my profession doesn't allow me to look at things that way. Everything is three-dimensional. Everything is site-specific. And when I visited this site, and I visited again between the meetings because I wanted to get a sense of what was there, and I drove from actually the Stead Airport. I drove through the industrial along Moya and Lear, and I came out of that and I was into residential. And then I went up the hill to go underneath the intersection at Red Rock, and I kept going up to get to the site. And when I was there, I could see no industrial. I wasn't high enough to be able to see what I had driven through at Moya and Lear, and I was blocked by the hills to see what was going on at Stead. And so then I drove down 395 and I kept getting higher, and I'm looking eye level directly across at the elevation of this site. And it's way above old 395. In three dimensions, this is, and it's much higher than anything else that we've got industrial on. And the extension, as we keep going, the hill keeps going up. 395 goes up and over into a whole different valley where we're talking about. So three-dimensionally, or two-dimensionally, everything is connected. But three-dimensionally, I cannot, in my mind, reconcile this land use with the adjacent uses. Whether or not that's appropriate, whether this always needs to stay this kind of rural area, there's just a big jump in intensity that is being asked for here. And that while that jump in intensity in other cases has been applicable. There's been a lot of these that, sitting on the Reno Commission, we've approved south or to the east of here that was part of what was being displayed. And those, the land use was different. It was contiguous. You could look and you could see and you were doing it. But going back to that regional form, that RF11, and I thought a lot about it, and it just comes down to when I stand on that site and I think about the intensification that this allows for in that particular geographical location, I absolutely cannot wrap my head around how to make that finding. So I appreciate, again, I guess being the chair, I have the ability to take the bully pulpit every once in a while. So I've spoken my piece. If nobody has anything else to say, we do have two motions that Nate has put up here again. Before we do, Nate, can you explain those again for us?
Absolutely, yes. So the first motion is to reverse your previous determination, which would then be finding the master plan amendment in conformance. The second motion on the screen would be to uphold your original determination of non-conformance.
Okay.
Hopefully that makes sense.
And then going back to, just to clarify from what our legal was saying, the vote at the top requires.
So the move to
majority.
uphold your first determination of non-conformance requires the supermajority, so a 2/3, is that reversed?
No, you got that reversed.
Hold on, just one
Legal.
moment.
Let's
Someone's
let you go.
going, and you don't necessarily have to move to reverse or to uphold. You are either basically having a vote, a motion for conformance, which is the top, or a motion for non-conformance, which is the bottom. The top one will be a 2/3 majority. The bottom is going to be a majority.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Commissioners. Commissioner Carey.
You're a tough act to follow, Mr. Chair.
Actually, Commissioner Gower is the articulate tough act to follow.
Very, very tough to follow, indeed. Yeah, I certainly appreciate the comments expressed from my colleagues from the city of Reno and Washoe County and from Sparks as well, too. That this is a tough one. I think it's the first one I've been on the regional since we've had, we weren't able to make the 2/3 requirements. I certainly appreciate the comments about compatibility and this kind of opening up the door and changing the character of this area. That I always take really into tough consideration whenever looking at a land use change adjacent to, from residential to something that's not residential. It's never easy. And but for me, I think it comes down to the work job or the work employment balance that the city of Reno staff was talking about tonight, and that our staff talked about at the last meeting regarding that there's a lack of employment opportunities in the North Valleys. And I think anyone that's been trying to get in and out of the North Valleys around peak hour or rush hour, it's tough. And I think we have in this particular area of the region, and certainly in other areas of the region as well too, a lack of land use compatibility with trying to get to that jobs to housing balance. And so I think I wish there was a way in our regional plan that we could dive further into it. I think we took a big step in the last update going to these tiering formats and kind of generally applying where we think growth is logically, but I think it would be more better to kind of dive into it at more of a deeper scale, and I think that would be able to alleviate some of the compatibility concerns, because this region has certainly intensified land uses, and then that's opened the door and totally changed the character of an area of the region for the worse. And I think the way to do it is really to, as a region, we need to get more to a jobs to housing balance in other areas of this area, but in particularly the North Valleys. And to me, I think from a regional forum and policy standpoint, I can find conformance, particularly with policy RC9, and I think because it's been designated as tier 2, I can concur with that. And not sure if that was as eloquent as you, Mr. Chair, but
Mine wasn't very eloquent either, but I appreciate the comments. I think at this point, we'd be looking for somebody to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner West,
I'm ready to make a motion.
the floor is yours.
I move to reverse the RPC's determination of May 26, 2022, and find the Peavine Employment Center amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan in conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the finding listed in this staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a motion. I have a
Commissioner
second.
Taylor, I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion before I ask for a roll call vote? Okay. Mr. Clerk, can we get a roll call vote on this, please?
I don't know if that's working. Oh, there we go. Now we're in business. Okay, Kathleen Taylor,
Yes.
Kate Nelson,
Yes.
Kyle West,
Yes?
Larry Chesney,
No.
Mark Johnson,
No.
Peter Gower,
No.
Sarah Chavilicek,
No.
Scott Carey,
Yes.
and Shelley Reed.
Yes.
I believe we have 5 in favor and 4 against.
Okay. So, same decision, so I'm going to turn this to legal.
We have a technical denial. The motion did not pass.
Okay. We do need to, we also have a motion that needs to be made on a project of regional significance, which is separate from that, so I will be looking for a motion on the project of regional significance as well. Because both of those need to move forward with, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. West?
I'm prepared to make a motion. And I move to find the Peavine Employment Center project of regional significance in conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in this staff report.
Commissioner Taylor, I second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Clerk?
All right, Kathleen Taylor,
Yes.
Kate Nelson,
Yes.
Kyle West,
Yes?
Larry Chesney,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
No.
Peter Gower,
No.
Sarah Chavilicek,
No.
Scott Carey,
Yes.
and Shelley Reed.
Yes.
Okay, I have 6 in favor for this one and 3 against.
Okay. So that motion passes. So, okay. Director Smith, do I have to say anything else on this one?
No,
Would
no, you
like
do
to-
not.
Would you
We-
like to say something else on this one?
Nope, that's the final action of this body.
Okay. Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is regional plan conformance review. I should have got some water before I started. For City of Reno Project of Regional Significance, Director Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. We have item 6B, which is a public hearing. It's the regional plan conformance review from the City of Reno for a project of regional significance for an NV Energy gas line. We have regional planner Chris Tolley to take us through.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Tolley, Team RPA. This item is a conformance review of the proposed City of Reno project of regional significance for the NV Energy gas line. Case number CR 22-004. So this request is required to be heard as a PRS for being a gas regulator station and gas main that operates over 100 pounds per square inch. And this PRS requirement is noted in the Nevada revised statutes and reiterated in the RPC's PRS guidelines resolution. The subject site where the gas regulator is proposed to be located is in Tier 2 of the Truckee Meadows service area. The parcel is approximately 24.11 acres in size and is located a half-mile northeast of the eastern terminus of the South Meadows Parkway. Regional planning staff recommends that the proposed PRS conforms with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. Again, the proposal would allow the establishment of a gas regulator station to serve the region and a gas line that originates in Story County. The gas regulator station is located in an existing regional utility site. And then we'll see, this is the neighborhood map in the staff report. And then we'll take a look at the aerial. And you can see the green line represents the Washoe County portion of the proposed gas line. And here you can see the full extent of the gas line originating at, I believe it's a Tracy substation in Story County, and then extending to the west down to, I think it's the Mariloma substation, where it terminates. So policy RC9 of the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan identifies the 5 factors that the RPC must consider when evaluating conformance. Staff determined that the proposed gas regulator station and gas line will not impact any of the factors listed in policy RC9. And as noted, staff is recommending that the proposed PRS conforms with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. And on the screen, you can see the proposed motion. This does conclude my presentation. However, TMRPA and City of Reno staff are available for any questions.
Thank you, Chris. That was about 55 minutes shorter than you promised it
Yes.
was going to be.
I did say an hour.
Okay. All right, appreciate that. Mr. Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
None?
Okay. I'll bring it back to the commission for any questions. Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, I had a question about this gas line and its purpose. Is it bringing gas from Story County to Washoe County?
Yes, yep.
Okay, and then as a follow-up, would this be, and I'm not too familiar with how the region's gas service is now, would this be like a new line for the entire region that we, trying to look at like redundancy in terms of, you know, if we lose the main gas line, would this be another way to bring gas into the region?
Yes, that's what I'm understanding.
Thank you for that. I've
Yeah.
learned a lot tonight.
Commissioners, additional questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Gower.
Thank you. Chris, I just want to confirm that this proposal does not require a utility corridor amendment.
That is correct. Utility corridors apply to the transmission lines and not to the actual gas lines. But when you look at the definitions listed in the regional plan, the gas station is required to be located in a regional utility site, which this parcel essentially is.
Okay. Thank you for confirming that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner? Additional questions? Or a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner
Chesney. I move to find the NV Energy Gas Line project of regional significance in conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. Motion, do I have a second?
Commissioner Gower, I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I think this will be an easy one. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You know what, it's just you can take the planning, away off the planning commission, I guess, but you can't take the planning commissioner out of it. My gut hurts from that last one, I'm sitting there. I mean, it's just, the tension's palpable. Mine was not smoother, thank you.
You should come back to the planning commission, Mark.
That's the good part too, I don't have to stay for the rest, I get to lead, I still have to, I appreciate the contribution you guys make. I know, I hear you guys talk about driving around, you reading the material, and, I mean, it's just a ton of time that you take away. I know it's from your family and kids and that kind of stuff. Other things you certainly could be doing, and I really do appreciate it. Well done, you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you. Thanks for slipping him a 20 on the way out. I appreciated that, yeah. Nice compliments. Yeah, exactly, yes, yes. Yeah. Thank you, okay. Next item on the agenda, Regional Plan Performance Review CR 22-005, Director Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. This is item 6C. It's a Regional Plan Conformance Review, City of Reno Master Plan for the Meridian 120 South open space change. We have Chris Tolley, Regional Planner again, to lead the presentation.
Good evening once again, Commissioners. Chris Tolley, TMRPA. I'll skip introducing the case because Director Smith just did. So it's case number 22-005. So this request is for an amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan, Mortensen-Garson Neighborhood Plan, and Mortensen-Garson Overlay District. The proposed amendment would change a portion of the existing parcel from the mixed employment land use to the parks, greenways, and open space land use. The subject site is approximately 8.3 acres of an approximately 80.64 acre parcel. The subject site is located in Tier 2 of the Truckee Meadows service area. And regional planning staff recommends that the amendment conforms with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. So that was the regional map that you saw up on the screen, and then here is a neighborhood map zoomed in on the parcel. And then as noted, the amendment is from mixed employment to parks, greenways, and open space. This amendment satisfies a condition of approval for the Meridian 120 South tentative map, which addressed compatibility of the mixed employment land use on the hilltop with the surrounding areas by changing the land use to the proposed parks, greenways, and open space. The subject site is proposed to be part of a larger connected network of PGOS. And finally, you can see the modification from the existing to the proposed on the map. So policy RC9 of the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan identifies the 5 factors the RPC must consider when evaluating conformance. This amendment would increase compatibility of the site with surrounding areas that are designated parks, greenways, and open space. And the amendment would also create a larger contiguous section of open space. And finally, as noted, staff is recommending the proposed amendment conforms with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. And then on to the motion, which is listed on the screen. It's also in the packet, although I don't know what page number it's on. This does conclude my presentation, but myself, Team RPA staff, and City of Reno staff are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That one was, I think, a minute shorter than the last one.
Yeah.
So, appreciate that. Mr. Clerk, do we have any requests to speak on this item? Okay. Bring it back to the commission for any questions of Chris. Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, from the staff perspective, the proposed land use change would basically remove the mixed-use employment, and there really won't be any non-residential land uses in this area. From a regional plan perspective, is this a concern?
This is not, so let me do one small clarification, because I see that this map actually doesn't represent what was the changes that went through with Santerre Quilisi. So there actually is a section off to, so this be towards the west or the left-hand side of the subject site, that is suburban mixed use. And so that change went through, I don't remember the date, but I believe it was a year or a year and a half ago. So there still is the potential for employment within this area. And there is more if we back out, I guess that's a little too far back, but along Interstate 80, there's also suburban mixed use, and I believe there's mixed employment. So there are still land uses that would support employment in the area. And then I think this is a pretty telling parcel. You look at the DCA, and if you look at the slope maps, I mean, this was just off the City of Reno site, but you see there's really even a more kind of constrained little area in between that could possibly support development. So the trade-off going from employment to open space, I think makes sense, certainly from looking at the balance of uses that are out there, and then also from the development constraints area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, any additional questions or comments? Okay, Commissioner Carey.
I had a question for the applicant, City of Reno. Welcome back. So I'm kind of just curious, we looked at the land use change last year, very similar, didn't make sense from a mixed employment area. And I asked the question, where do people work within the Morton Garrison neighborhood plan and the Morton Garrison overlay district area? And here we are again, coming back, proposing to remove additional mixed employment. Where do people work out in this area of the region?
Certainly, I think what we're seeing, right at the intersection there of Boomtown. So you have the Boomtown, that area is developing out with the Cabela's. Then the neighborhood, there's a vacant parcel directly to the west of that we have that entitled, that has been entitled to come in as warehousing. And then further to the north of that, we're seeing another big industrial complex in that area. Additionally, as regional planning staff mentioned, we do have that suburban mixed use that would allow for that alternative work uses and some of that within the area. Thank you. So we're seeing that AC, we have the HC, that's that hotel commercial, that's Boomtown there. Directly to the west of that or to the left of that is arterial commercial. That's where we're seeing the Cabela's. That MS next to that, we have entitled that through the city of Reno as some warehouse flex industrial uses there. And then you're seeing directly to the north of that, that large portion of industrial commercial that's predominantly developed out at this point.
And what was the point of this property being, why did it have the mixed employment on it anyway?
Yeah, so that came through this large entitlement process, and then obviously we have the Mortensen Garson overlay district that's applied to that, and the court hearings associated with that. So with this time, what we're seeing, that's why we're seeing that open space carved out and those other areas carved out. The thought at this time when they were doing that is similar to be trying to apply a mix of uses in that area. But what we've seen is those mix of uses have come in probably more logical places than on hilltops or some of that we're seeing in this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any additional questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Taylor, I move to find the Meridian 120 South Open Space Amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan in conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a motion. Second.
Chesney, second.
Motion is second. Any additional discussion? Mr. Carey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remain a little concerned about the loss of mixed employment, as I would really with anywhere in the region, but I'm going to go, and I appreciate the information from staff on this one and the analysis going to the uses to the north and what's been going on around Boomtown. I do appreciate it. I think it does from a logical standpoint with the hillside constraint and allowing for more contiguous open space. I think it makes sense, but kind of getting back to my comments earlier in the meeting, I wish as a region we would do better with the jobs to house balance, and maybe there's a different way to look at it. And I'm a little concerned about with this area. It just seems there's been a lot of residential development, and people still need a place to work. They still need a place to shop. But this is a small one. I'm gonna go with staff on that one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Brooke. All right, next, members and directors reports. Do you have any members reports before I turn it over to Director Smith? Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to quickly update the commission. Earlier this month, Director Smith and I went and made a presentation to the Pyramid Lake Tribal Council about the natural resources plan. I think the presentation went very well. I had a conversation with Chairwoman Davis, and she appreciated the outreach. Basically, we went and explained to them what the purpose of the natural resource plan update was, and invited them and the community at large to be a part of the process. We're going to be making a similar presentation to the Reno Sparks Indian Colony Tribal Council on July 13th, and I'm hoping for a positive outcome for that. But I think it's important to make this additional outreach on a government-to-government basis with our tribal partners, and we'll continue that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Director Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. I just want to echo Commissioner Carey's comments about the presentation to the tribe out at Pyramid Lake. It was a great experience. They had some really good advice already for how we could integrate their thoughts and traditions into our natural resource planning effort and sort of some of the potential policies. They were willing to participate on the category subcommittees as well. So that was pretty exciting to know. And I'm looking forward to the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. And I was just, this interesting thing, I used to work at Michael Baker years before, long ago in a previous lifetime. And I didn't even make the connection because this person was on Zoom when we were out there, but the tribal lands manager, Richard Frazier, and I used to actually work with him. So it turns out I do have a connection at the tribe, which is pretty great. Moving on, I also participated in a presentation at the Census Transportation Planning Products Conference. Very, very technical. Yes, very direct. Yeah, I didn't see that coming, but it was at 8:30 in the morning. It was incredibly weird. But I learned a lot, actually, and I made some good reconnections with some folks at NDOT. And so it's nice to have the connection to that planning department again, and it was a learning experience that I enjoyed, so that happened. Just a little bit of what's coming down the pike. You can expect our annual report, the TMAR, to be available and brought forward to you at the next meeting. And so then we'll take that to the governing board at their August meeting. Following that, in August, we will have gone through in August, I think I've mentioned it already, the process to take the consensus forecast, population projection, to the water planning bodies, the NNWPC and Western Regional Water Commission, to ensure that we have the identified sustainable water resources to meet that projection. And then with that, we would bring it at the end of August, if all goes as planned, and they approve that, then to you, this body, for a final adoption of the consensus forecast. So that'll be coming in August. Some good news also is that we were successful in establishing a interlocal agreement and a shared work program with the Western Regional Water Commission and TMRPA for an amount of up to $50,000 per year. So we'll be helping to support them with the regional water management plan, some of the stuff we've done before, like water and wastewater demand calculation, but also some of the great work that Shawnee brings to the agency with the graphics and our social media and outreach to help Kim Rigdon, who is the new program manager there, to basically revamp the regional water management plan and take it kind of from the old style of government document to something we did similarly with the regional plan, something more approachable. And in that vein, I sat today on a steering committee meeting for the Washoe County Master Plan, and they also are using our plan. They went so far as to say that they, with their consultant, looked around the nation at many plans and kept coming back to our regional plan as probably the most up-to-date and direct way to approach making this kind of information accessible to people. So it was a really great feather in a cap, and they even copied our hexagons. So the hexagons are on the cover as it stands right now, which is interesting. Right? So with that, our next regular RPC meeting will be in a month, on July 28th, and that will be back over at the Washoe County Commission chambers and also on Zoom. So hopefully that'll be a little more communicated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Smith. Legal counsel report, Jessica.
Nothing to report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next time, we promise you'll be able to sit at the same level as everybody else.
She gets to leave quickly.
Okay, commissioners, any requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment.
Also none.
Still no public comment?
No, there's a
Mr.
lot in
Chair?
the crowd out there.
I am going to turn it to Commissioner Chivilicek.
I do have a public comment. And Jeremy, when I met with Washoe County planning staff, they're doing one-on-ones with the Washoe County Planning Commissioners. I did ask, I said, these hexagons, do you have permission? And he goes, yeah, you were on that commission when this was passed. I said, yes, but do you have permission?
Thank you. It's a shape.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Taylor, I was just curious, do we get to say a formal goodbye to one of our commissioners?
I was going to bring that up, but if you would like to.
No, go ahead.
I was actually going to bring it up to turn it over to Director Smith. I didn't know if we were supposed to sing or.
Well, wait. We will plan to create a resolution of appreciation for the service of Commissioner Chesney, but as I was learned recently, this is his last meeting, so just really appreciate all of your hard work, and we'll want to bring you back so we can do the formal reading of all the greatness.
You bring my bronze statue back, right?
Yes.
I'd like to say it's been a great pleasure working with everybody. I've been on Washoe County Planning Commission 8 years and 2 terms on this commission, and it's phenomenal work. Everybody works their fannies off to make things happen. We've all been very gracious and able to agree to disagree and agree on a lot of things. And I think it's been a wonderful experience because I spent 38 years in the research and development business in a national laboratory, and there was never this type of collaboration, trust me. So this has been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Chesney. It's been a great pleasure to have you on there with us.
Thank you.
And you will get invited to come back and stand up and have a bunch more platitudes read to you at the
Take
next
my
meeting.
beating.
Yes, exactly. But the good news about that one is once it's done, once you've had that, you can leave.
It's all over.
Yes. So, any written correspondence?
No.
Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over because,
Move to adjourn.
thank you. Thanks. Good night, everyone. Thanks, everyone.